Hello there. So I guess it's been a day for it, hasn't it? Um, it's been an interesting one politically because obviously we saw not just the Prime Minister resign, we saw a reshuffle from the National Party. Evening, Jacks. Um, yeah, I'm kind of curious what's everybody's thoughts at the moment. How are you feeling? How does today make you feel? Because it was a bit of a surprise. Not a big surprise, but still a surprise for me. Evening, Justine. Hey, Chris. I was wondering the same thing. I think we've all had that dream of sort of winning lotto and just saying, yeah, no, I'm out of here the next day. It'd be absolutely brilliant. And I think we can all relate to that. Oh, I have to go back to work after the holidays and I just cannot be asked doing it. It feels kind of like that to me at the moment. Not that I had much of a holiday. Later. I'll have a holiday later. But it wasn't me who won Powerball, so maybe it was Jacinda. So we've got 7 viewers so far. 8 viewers so far. 11. Ooh. Wow, I guess nobody else had anything good to do on a Thursday night. Had to double check that it's been a long week. So yeah, how is everybody feeling about today's big news? Are you as shocked as I am that Barbara Kuriger has been dropped down the line of the party list some way? Hey, you guys, feels like when the Queen passed, it had to happen at some point. Also never wanted it to happen. Got to remember, I can put these comments up on screen so everyone can see them. I don't just have to read them out. Best Prime Minister we've ever had. It's an interesting one. I think she'll certainly be remembered in a very positive light. Absolutely positive light. Let's see what Jack says. Tad sad, and I really don't blame her since she set foot in there. It's been one thing after the other. Some couldn't be helped, but I really feel sad and feel for her. Yep, absolutely. Oh, yeah. So, Phil, you've done something braver than me. I have not looked at any of those pages today, like Groundswell or the Freedom Outdoors Party, anything on Telegram. I've been busy today anyway. I had an optometrist appointment not long after the announcement was made. That's almost all everyone was talking about. That in a fight that broke out in the warehouse where people were screaming at each other. It's very strange. So yeah, I dread to think what that's going to be like. I wonder though who they're going to vilify next, because it's really hard to vilify whoever the next person is, especially if they happen to be a cis white male. Misogyny is going to be all over the place. I'm gutted, but good for her. She made the decision that was best for her and her family. I totally agree with you there, Justine. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm the same, Jax. So this is an interesting one, Fee. I've had a lot of comments on my TikTok feed along the lines of Nanaya for Prime Minister, but all from people who are trolling. Like it's all a very deliberate. If Labour wants to throw it in, Nanaya is the one to put in charge, and a whole bunch of really racist shit like around her moko. It's really disgusting. So we have Ryan here as well, really upset about it. But on the same front, happy she'll be able to be with her family and just be happy, hopefully. Still sad, though. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's an interesting moment because we haven't, it's not very often that we see a prime minister up and leave because of what's going on outside of the job. When John Key left, it was because he wanted to refresh the National Party. For this one, it feels like there's a whole bunch of other stuff that's coming into play. Yeah, let me show you guys something. So, where did I put it? This one here. This is a tweet from Dr. Sanjana Hatutawa, who is part of the Disinformation Project. And he is one of the people who does all of the research around misinformation and disinformation. He tweeted this out actually about 15 minutes ago. So just the sheer fact that the amount of hatred and vitriol against any MP, any elected person, is at that level is really kind of scary. Oh, see, I like this one. It was quite interesting because I think we didn't see this outpouring when John Key decided to stand down. It was very much okay, yep, bye, good luck, Bill, see how things go. And Bill was Bill, he did what he had to do. He's done more than 5 years and a bit in the Nats combined. And that's a really interesting one as well, because the Nats were there for so long. I think sometimes it's easy to forget some of the things that the National Party did do. But it does feel like we've seen a lot more change in the last 5 years than we did for the 9 years before it. I think she would too, Phil. Like it's. I was reading a comment somewhere before that she was off on holiday over the summer vacation with Neve, and some crazy conspiracy theorist started screaming at her in the middle of a car park. Yeah, it's that kind of thing that must make it really impossible to do anything publicly. Nobody wants that pressure. And can you imagine having that happen to you in front of your kids? How your kids would feel about that? How safe would a 4-year-old feel about that happening? Like it's a horrible situation for them to be in. Let's see what Tamaki has to say. She's probably too nice. Labour now needs a leader who has thick skin, but at the same time carry Labour Party forwards. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Anyone want to hazard a guess as to who's going to be the new Labour leader? Because I have no idea. Because Grant Robinson said no, he's not going to do it. Chris Hipkins. Let's see what Dave has to say. I'm truly gutted for Aotearoa, but happy for Jacinda and her family. Why keep pushing shit uphill when the mainstream media, outside forces of right-wing darkness and a cynical, poisonous opposition have gathered to pull down the best PM ever? It's only so much one person can take. You're absolutely right. Yeah, absolutely right about how much hate she's had to. I did actually laugh, actually. Just before I started this, TVNZ put up a post about what she's had to go through for the last 5 years. And Jessica Mutch Mackay was commenting about, it's expected, but we didn't expect it quite so soon. And the comments were all there about how Jessica Mutch Mackay is obviously a Jacinda fan. And it's like 3 months ago, we were talking about the fact that she was the one caught on a hot mic, talking about how we have to make Luxon seem more prime ministerial. And it's like, do people forget things that fast? Like it's, yeah. I don't know. I suspect this one might not quite pass the muster for the Labour Party. Call it a hunch. Hipkins is reasonably sound. He's a victim of his own sort of success in a way, in that he's got so many portfolios already. He's been the face of things like the press conferences around COVID for a bit, so there might be a bit of baggage for those people who are very conspiracy theorist minded or unhappy with the COVID response with him. And saying that, I don't think there'll ever be anybody that they're happy with who isn't some complete fucking nut job. Which thankfully we don't have too many of those elected. I don't know who my money's on. No idea yet. But I've been very surprised at some of the reactions that we've seen around the place. This is actually a bar not far from where I used to work, just around the corner from where I worked. And I had to catch a bus directly across the road from this. This guy has a van that is literally covered with all of these conspiracy theories that he drives around the city. He ran for local council, and because it was Auckland City Council, I wasn't allowed to talk about it, which was really frustrating. But yeah, he's decided he's having a leaving party tonight. Honestly, it's just a scummy place to be. It's got horrible, gross vibes just being near it. But yeah, he's throwing a party. It's such a classy thing to do. Much like Hotel Motueka, which is having a celebration, $10 jugs and bottles all day tomorrow to celebrate the leaving of Jacinda. Aren't these people wonderful? That is scary. That's really scary. I kind of hope, though, that Labour does really well in the next election now, just to piss these people off more. or that the Greens have a surge. Because can you imagine how annoyed they would be if the Greens had a surge and ended up being the balance of power? Yeah, it can be. Yeah. It's a difficult thing to juggle sometimes, trying to get that balance of the right message and facts out without putting your bias on it. And most major media outlets are not very good at it. This is an interesting one as well, Jax, because I've had a whole bunch of people mention to me dealing with businesses who took money during the lockdowns and COVID, like the business fund that was set up, now complaining that Jacinda is up and leaving or that she's a terrible prime minister. And it's like, well, they're the ones that took the money to keep the business afloat. Where would they be if National had been in charge at the time or if ACT had been in charge at the time? It's yeah, it's definitely a tricky one. Definitely a tricky one. Hope for her sake she stays out of social media. Oh, absolutely. That you're absolutely right. Seeing how fast the comment sections are filling up at the moment is unbelievable. Like within 5 minutes of the announcement, there was 230 comments on it. Excuse me, at least one social media page, and it was really ridiculous. Like a lot of them were, thank you for what you've done, which is fine. And there were a few that were, not a fan of her policies, but she served the country. Well done, which I think is the right response. But those that were just like, yeah, finally the horse has bolted, that kind of bullshit. Would you talk to other people like that in real life? Like it feels wrong. And some of the comments are just so full of sexism and misogyny. You have to sort of sit there wondering, would you talk to your mother this way? Would you talk to your daughter or your wife this way? Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Oh, I like this idea, Justine. Removing people from your Facebook. Um, the hate from people I know towards Jacinda and the nastiness I decided they weren't people I wanted to. Yeah, that's fair. That's very fair. New year, new you. Completely get that. Just, yeah, blocking people. Yeah. Yep, you're absolutely right on this one, Lily. It's been really disgusting. Really, really disgusting. Uh, it's all those social media pages that allow them to keep. Oh, yeah. Let's see if I can show this one. There we go. It annoys me that they don't turn off the comments knowing that putting that post up is going to pull out all of this vitriol. And it's because for so many of the mainstream media companies, one of their KPIs is interactions. And the more people comment, the more interactions they get. And it doesn't matter if they're good or bad. They just go out of their way to get that interaction and that engagement because it makes them think they're interacting better and connecting more with people. But the reality is, if they're spreading hatred like that, then it can be really harming to people down the line. It can be really awful. So you have to juggle it. And most mainstream media companies these days know of how much hatred her specifically or anything around COVID, for example, is going to get. So they should be shutting those comments off straight away. And you can still share them. You can still talk about them on your own page. It's not limiting your freedom of speech. Not that you have freedom of speech on social media, but idiots don't realize that. But it's one of those things that they know better and they should do better, and they just don't. They absolutely don't. Um, this is an interesting one as well. I totally agree with you here, Chris. She's definitely not a fascist. She's kind of centrist, like just a little left of center, more than a fascism style government. Communism's the other one that I hear an awful lot, which I find hilarious. It's people just think the big scary words are going to make sure that everybody thinks that she's a big scary person. Yeah, that's actually an interesting one, Tamaki, because generally speaking, the comments that I've seen over the last couple of years, the misogynistic ones have come from men 9 times out of 10, and they're usually older white men. Today, I've noticed a lot of older white women coming out, and their comments have tended to be along the lines of, "Oh, thank God she's gone," that kind of thing. It's not as hate filled, but it feels like a lot of them coming out of the woodwork now, and that's an interesting thing to sort of sit down and watch. Oh, people don't study history. That's hard. Reading is hard. Why would you read? It is fascinating to watch just how much of this sort of like seeing people have this great joy in somebody leaving their job. I have great joy if I leave a job I don't like, absolutely, but I don't want people out there celebrating that way. I think you're absolutely right here. It didn't really work out the way that they thought it would, but to be fair, they still got 45% of the party vote um, on that election in 2017, just after he stood down. Um, you know, they had reason to believe that it had worked, and then they crumbled. Like their first term, they absolutely crumbled. Um, and they kind of went up against it a little bit with the last election being in the middle of COVID. Like that was a really hard thing for any party to get around. But yeah, the National Party, the current National Party, I think is still a shadow of what it was under John Key. And even then, I don't think it was great, personally. Each to their own, I guess. But yeah, it's interesting. So, this has to be one of the things I was waiting for today as well. Yeah, I found it interesting as well that last year, I think, was the first year that we had an exact 50-50 split in Parliament of men and women. It's taken a long time to get there, a very long time. And I always find comments like this interesting because the amount of abuse that her partner has had has also been really painful to sit back and watch. Yeah, I see exactly what you mean, Judy. Like it's the response that we saw today from her, from the Prime Minister, was very emotive. Obviously, she was very emotional about it. And to see people gloating about someone being that emotionally vulnerable is horrible at any point in time. She's certainly been interesting. The funny thing I found with Jacinda, and I've always found it so that like I've never worked with her directly, but I know people who have, and they always came back with the same thing about her, and that she's kind of boring. She's a policy nerd. And to sort of see how well she's done when she stepped up to the plate has surprised them. But deep in her heart, she's a big old nerd, which I don't know if you can tell, big old nerd is kind of what I do well. But it's fascinating to see how those sort of features in her have come out that people didn't realize were there, that it even worked with her. This will be an interesting one. I think they will. I think they have to have that sort of refresh feeling. So this is a really good excuse now for them to turn around and scrap things like the TVNZ merger with RNZ, because that was Jacinda's baby. We don't need to do that now. We're refreshing. We don't have. Maybe next term we'll look into it. I don't think Three Waters is anything that's going to change, because that's sort of so far down the path, but it's definitely an interesting one. Somebody pointed out as well that Jacinda did promise there'd be no capital gains tax while she was Prime Minister. 3 weeks, she won't be Prime Minister. Maybe a capital gains tax could be something that gets put on the table for the election. And I think that could be an interesting one to get a lot of people sort of sniffing the air and seeing which way things are going. Michael would be an interesting choice. He seems to have that kind of honesty that people like in politicians here. Thank you very much for that, Tama. Much appreciated. Lots of evangelical Christian friends relishing. I know. Yeah. I don't have that many evangelical Christian friends. They don't like certain lifestyle choices I make. So good on them. They can sit there and celebrate. I'll just sit back and let them have their little party, and they can do what they want. It'd be a choice, I guess. It doesn't feel like a very Christian thing to me, though, to sit there and celebrate when somebody is obviously doing something that emotional and that important for them. But what do I know? You're absolutely right here, Tama. Going backwards would be a big mistake. They would lose so many voters by doing that, and there's a lot of people who feel they're not going forward fast enough with an outright majority, and they've only got a few months now to actually do anything with that. But Yeah, a refresh is not a bad thing, and everything needs a refresh from time to time. Look, it's actually done the National Party really well, sort of when they got in the new leader, and that's refreshed the image of the party. Maybe not necessarily in the way that they exactly want, but it's done a refresh for them. But I think Labour needs that as well. And there's so much time for the election. Who knows? The thing that's bugging me at the moment is people talking about the election like it's over and lost already. And that's not the case, not by a long shot. Every election is unique. The dental care one gets me. Like it annoys me so much that it shows up every election cycle and everyone's like, oh, it's really complicated. It's like, no, it's not. It shouldn't be that complicated. And there's already things for, like people who are on a benefit, for example, can get subsidized dental care through WINS. And yeah, you have to jump through a million hoops to get there, but there's at least a path there for some of that. But generally speaking, free dental care makes as much sense as free visits for kids to go to the doctors. Like it just, oh, it's painful. It's really painful. I think Grant would be an interesting choice for Prime Minister. I know he has said I don't know if you can hear that, but my little dog is yapping next door. But yeah, Grant said he's not going to run. He made a promise that he wasn't going to run, and he's standing by that, which is really good to see. I think he could make a very good Prime Minister. It'll be very interesting to see who they do end up going with. But I also think if you look at the amount of hate that Jacinda has had as a female Prime Minister, can you imagine the level of hate from those same people if we had an openly gay Prime Minister seeking an election for the first time? Like it would be so hard on everybody to sit back and watch that kind of shit hit the fan. You're absolutely right there, Teddy Order. Yeah. I was sort of like planning what I was going to be doing content wise for the next couple of months, and this is sort of throwing everything out. Yeah. A loss isn't a foregone conclusion. A win isn't a foregone conclusion. We're not going to know more for a while. I do notice that the Taxpayers Union has a poll coming out tomorrow, which is obviously done before all this happened, which they're touting is the first time the Prime Minister's had a negative result or something, some sort of spin. Yet they don't answer people when they ask how much they spent on OIA requests. But it'll be really interesting to see sort of the next couple of polls, especially after we find out who the new Prime Minister is. And there'll be a lot of discussions going on within the caucus over the next few days as to what's going to happen. Monday morning when we wake up, we'll probably have an idea as to who the next Prime Minister is. Yeah, the dental just and I know for well, like these cost me an awful lot of money because dentistry is not cheap. If we had free dentist care, probably wouldn't be a problem. Oh, I bet I haven't actually had a look at the outdoors party, Judy. Like I don't have the mental capacity for it today. Like just not today. It's maybe tomorrow. No, tomorrow I'm getting divorced. But today I just don't have the capacity for it. It's just not good. Yeah, this is a big one. See, like I'm a big film fan myself, and I totally understand the need for these subsidies, but there's things that we could spend money on better, like local films for a start. And free dental care is something that has so many long-term effects and good effects for society. To me, it feels like a no-brainer. But yeah, it's so hard. Yep, yeah, it was, and again, I have to be very careful about what I say around the taxpayers union because I am employed by somebody who employs them. That's complicated. One of my people that I contract to has a lot to do with the taxpayers union. It's just really frustrating. But yeah, they're painful. I thought this was actually hilarious because he announced the reshuffle this morning, and it was really surprising to see the story about Barbara Kuriger yesterday and I'm not going anywhere, I'm sticking to politics. And then you see the reshuffle and she gets bumped off the list. So it's you win your seat or you're out kind of thing. And then there was a whole bunch of commentary about, oh yeah, well, just watch Labour announce their reshuffle today to knock them off the front page. Yeah, well, Labour definitely did that. Oh, yeah, I knew that was going to be the case, Evie. Like, it's so painful. Um, it's really awkward living in a country that at times feels so progressive, and then you see these people and they're doing everything they can to drag us back to the Stone Age. Like, it's awful. Right. What is your Facebook page thingy? So if you just look up Paul the Other One on Facebook, you should see me there. I think I've got like this lovely shot of me going. I don't know, the lighting was good. It worked for me. You can check me out there. There's a little bit more content than what I put on things like YouTube, which is what you're watching on at the moment. Yeah, so feel free to jump in, have a look, comment, like, share, subscribe. What else do you do on Facebook these days? I don't think he will. Like, I wouldn't mind if he did, but I don't think he'll change his mind. I think that would be a really bad way to start a campaign to run for the job for a start, sort of flip-flopping, and it will look really bad in the eyes of voters. I mean, this is an interesting one as well, Michael, because like we've had MMP governments in the past, um, which is it's felt like a two-party race because that's how media frames it. But if you look at things like the first MMP sort of government was very much an MMP government. Even under John Kiwi, you had sort of three parties that were trying to work together. They had really different requirements. So, like the John Key government actually did remarkably well with things like treaty settlements, and that was because they were partnered with Te Pāti Māori at the time. So there was a lot of bringing that element into it, and I think that's the joy of an MMP party or MMP government. I'm really hoping that we actually see it used to its full potential this election. My wisdom teeth are telling me funded dental would be jumpers. Yeah, that is a comment I can bite down on. Absolutely, I can sink my teeth into that one. It's funded dental would be amazing. Oh, Tom has found the page. Excellent. Nothing too scary on there, I hope. Consensus politics is a great idea, yeah. And I think that's the interesting thing as well about like we've had MMP now for 30 odd years. It's coming up 30 years. It's really interesting to see. Is it 30 years? 97. Okay, 25-ish years. So yeah, 26. It's been a long day. But yeah, it's I think it's important to have that consensus in there. I don't think we will ever see in our lifetimes again another outright majority. That was just a complete COVID related pandemic fluke. It feels like a wasted opportunity, but in some cases I'm actually kind of glad that they didn't go full steam ahead and do absolutely a million changes, because that would put people off ever wanting to vote for an outright majority again if that situation. Yeah, complicated stuff. Judas Collins at 10 is a big fan. Yeah, yeah. It was interesting, that one. I tell you what I did like though about the reshuffle. I think Tama Portaka in that housing portfolio that he's got, or that urban housing portfolio, I think it is. He's worked in that area before, especially when he was working with Tainui and a whole bunch of stuff that they did within the Waikato region. I actually think he's a good choice for that. And I think it's really interesting to see Muller as both environment and agriculture spokesperson. But it's either going to be like this massive conflict of interest when you talk to the farmers who are really anti-change, or it could be a really interesting way to say, now look, this is what we need to do, and from a farmer's perspective, this is how we tackle it. In-laws are dancing happiness over Jacinda standing down. Ugh, yeah, there's some terrible, terrible reactions out there. It's just, yeah, because people can be terrible. People like being terrible. Yeah, you're absolutely right there, Michael. It is. It has felt very much like a two-party system with minor parties, and MMP shouldn't be that. Yeah, it's National doesn't have a lot to pick from at the moment. Like realistically, their numbers are very depleted, and they can sit there and plan as much as they want. And those portfolio positions are really important now for them going into the election year. But yeah, it's not a party that inspires confidence in me yet. So I don't think that there'll be a U-turn on Three Waters. I think there might be a refresh in how they approach it, but it's something that they've been so determined to do that's not going to change anytime soon. Something like the RNZ TVNZ merger, that will probably get the chop. And there'll be a whole bunch of reasons for it. And basically, it's because people keep telling them it's not popular. So why would they do it? I don't know that there's any other sort of super big policies that they aren't in a process now of having gone too far to be able to reverse it. This is a really interesting way to look at it. I love the idea of the Trump effect. The name is brilliant. Um, and you're right. Like a lot of that exposure on social media is a really tough one because of the way that social media works. And different channels work differently. But something like Facebook, for example, you pick and choose who you talk to on Facebook. It's all about friends and connections you've already got. So you tend to trust it more than something like Twitter, where it's like an open forum. And so if you've got people on Facebook who are falling down that rabbit hole and exposing that kind of misogyny or misinformation or disinformation, you tend to trust it more because of the sources. And then the algorithms pick up on that and they push that kind of information out to you, and it's a real mess. Um, in a way, I think she definitely fell victim to that. When you look at how she spoke and what she said in her resignation speech today, there was a lot of, she'll never say it was about the misogyny online or the attacks that she gets, but yeah, no, like people can read between the lines and go, yeah, that's clearly what a big factor of this is for her. I don't know whether or not a Scottish actor could be a New Zealand Prime Minister. Could try, could definitely try. You mentioned a refresh in policies, information about political party and its ideological position becomes more easily available following a leadership change because of the intense media coverage. A new leader can even change how voters think about their policy positions. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of it comes down into the delivery and who is delivering that information. Um, it's here's a really interesting example for you that I don't know a lot of people are aware of. You would have come across the change from when SIFs became Oranga Tamariki. It's essentially the same organization. There were some tweaks that came into place, and Labour presented that as this is how we're going to help kids and save child poverty and all that other kind of stuff. And whether or not they've delivered is debatable. But that whole setup was actually done under the John Key government. But to have the John Key government turn around and say, we're doing this for child poverty and to save the kids, doesn't have the same weight as if somebody like Jacinda says it because of the way that they're perceived by the public. And I know people who actually worked on that transition who felt like Labour fumbled it because they were literally handed a look, here's a big shiny change that the last government's put in place that you can take credit for, and didn't. But they still wore the changes that were coming through without sort of pushing back on any other big sweeping changes to the organisation. The faces that presented are really important. And I think people forget that sometimes. So you're absolutely spot on there, Deborah. It makes perfect sense. Sweepstake. I'll take $10 on the 15th of June being a nightmare day. It'll be interesting. I think Luxon has, because he used to run an airline. I think he has the wherewithal to understand what he needs to have happen over the next week. Like giving Judith a little bit of more seniority, that to me feels risky, especially with Cam Slater on the sidelines going at the moment. If they can get through the next sort of couple of weeks, I think he'll have a solid presentation to go out to people for the election, but he still has to manage to get through the next few weeks. Yeah, absolutely right there, Tama. It's really out of it. That Hikoi was a big one. Let me see. I've got a picture here. Is this? Yeah, so this is actually outside Napier this afternoon, after the Prime Minister had already left, and they've got the same sort of freedom flags and that same sort of rhetoric that we expect from a Trump rally, or that we saw in Wellington in February, March last year. Like it's yeah, the Trump effect has got a lot to answer for. I would kind of hope that the media would give us something fair and balanced now that we've got a new leader and we don't know who it is, or will have a new leader and don't know who it is. Because fair and balanced is what we need. Ideally, we don't want media going for or against a political person or party. We want them to present the facts as they are and let people make up their own mind. And media can't do that these days. It just seems impossible for them. This is an interesting one, actually, because I'm not a freedom camper myself. My father is, though. He loves freedom camping. And one of the things, he did a big freedom camp thing sort of October last year, just around his birthday, went up to Northland and did the trip up there. Almost every stop that he went to, and like he'd stop, go to the bathroom, grab something to eat, that kind of thing. Everywhere he stopped, he would have one angry local come up to him and complain that you cannot park that here. Like, it brought out a lot of anger with people. It was really quite strange because it's not hurting anyone. And I'd imagine there's probably a few bad eggs that have ruined it for people, but there seems to be this weird underlying anger about it. Not sure, given Collins up in the mix. She's out for blood. Oh, yeah. Judith Collins is not one to forgive and forget. She is much more one to remember, hold on to a grudge, and have a knife behind her back for just the right time when she can pull it out. And she's shown that over and over and over. Yeah, it feels a little dangerous to give her a position like that. But who knows? Maybe we'll be lucky. Maybe she'll choose to stand down at the next election. I'm still sure everywhere she goes, people go, oh, Talofa. That actually doesn't surprise me either, Thomas. The American Republican idealism that we're seeing at the moment, like the extreme part of the Republican Party, seeing that rhetoric come through here in this country, that's actually really depressing and very sad. It's the sort of thing that we shouldn't have to deal with because it's not who we are. It's a very American thing, but it annoys me. It annoys me. I don't think there's much of a chance of ACT imploding before the election because the ACT party is David Seymour plus friends, and they tend to follow David's lead, even when David does really stupid things, like his announcement today, by Jacinda, but you sucked, was really off the mark and really off-putting for a lot of people. None of the other people in the party have turned around and said, maybe that wasn't the right thing to say or not the right time to put that sentiment out. They've been dead silent. Like it's just been absolutely quiet. So I don't think we will see a fumble from ACT. They know that they've got about a 10% core voter turnout at the moment, and that's probably not going to change if they don't do anything too drastic. And everybody knows what David's like, so they'll weather the storm. National might be a bit harder to judge. Recent history has shown that the closer that they get to the pressure point of an election, the more likely something is to screw up. And all it would take is for somebody to leak the Uffindale report or to give Cam Slater's allegations of bullying some kind of oxygen that proves what he's saying for the party itself to start to show its cracks. So there's more chance of National than there is of ACT having a problem. The Young Turks of Aotearoa. I love that name. The Young Turks are absolutely amazing. Free and fair media is one of those things that I just wish we had more of. That it's so hard to see. And like even media like Stuff, which comes across as kind of centrist for most people, has a right-wing lean to it, which is really interesting when you sit down and do the analysis on it. We don't really have a centrist, unbiased media out there. And it's so frustrating. So very, very frustrating. God, I've been doing this for 40 minutes. No wonder my throat's getting sore. So with new Prime Minister, new policies, what policies do people want to see? Is there is capital gains tax the sort of thing that would win your votes, or free dental care, or critical thinking about media studies in schools, which is kind of already there. Misinformation, disinformation, educational reforms. No, Simon, I can't say I have ever watched Big Hairy News. It sounds like I'm going to write that down because that actually sounds like something. Get my notes all over the place. This is the joy of working so many contracts at the moment that my note paper's all over the place. But at least a pen is easy to find. Okay, this is starting to sound like something I have to watch very soon. Out of curiosity, where do you guys get your mainstream media from? Do you follow mainstream media? Do you have an outlet that you prefer? Ooh, okay. I'm usually free about then if I'm not playing computer games. I should make sure that this is finished by 9 then, so everyone can watch that. And it's going to be so weird seeing Jacinda as a backbencher for a couple of months. Weird comments from people. On other platforms, not this one. These ones. Let's have a look. Young Turks News Hub, just whatever, something I want to read. I think most people on my feeds it's always interesting, I find, when somebody who is very right-leaning stumbles across my stuff, because there's either no interaction, so I don't know that they're there, or it's trying to point out where I'm wrong or where my bias is, and I don't hide my bias. And seeing the responses to that has always made me laugh. Like people are very passionate about these things, as they should. News Hub I don't watch though, but only because I don't have terrestrial TV. I only have a PlayStation 4 and I run everything through that. And TV3 doesn't have an app on there. TVNZ does. So that's why I watch TVNZ News. Oh, you're totally right here, Justine. Like it is, yeah, it can be really difficult. There's been some fascinating stuff over the last couple of weeks as well that just makes no sense whatsoever from mainstream media. I like that idea actually. Giving you that balance is interesting. And TVNZ has certain requirements it has to meet being a publicly funded broadcaster. TV3 doesn't necessarily have the same sort of elements it has to incorporate because it's a privately funded broadcaster. So you do get very different perspectives on different sorts of news. Like it's fascinating to sit down and watch. Watch TV, listen to radio, read papers, and then I'll pop into the dark side as well. Yeah, I know that feeling well. It's I always find it fascinating when you get a story to see the perspectives of those people who don't have the critical thinking skills to look at it objectively. It's one of the reasons why I get a kick out of looking at things like the outdoors party when something crazy happens, like the person who ran that cafe down in Kaikoura. Is it Beam Me Up? Love the name, very clever name. But sovereign citizen who refused to follow food safety procedures, and like the facts are really simple in that, and the explanations make a lot of sense. And seeing how those dark side pages sort of spin it is really fascinating and bloody funny sometimes. So funny. But it also sort of highlights to me some of the areas that we need to work on more as a society to make sure that these people understand that, you know what, somebody who refuses to let you know what they're doing to keep people safe in a position where they should is dangerous if they're not going to pass on that information or live into those, work up to those standards. So yeah, it's always fascinating. Hey, Craig. Good to see you here. Brutal truth for non-mainstream media stuff. News Hub News in NZ Herald, TVNZ. Yeah, I jump between all of them actually. News Hub, I'll occasionally jump on their website, occasionally. And the Herald I go to every now and then. But generally for the Herald stuff, I find that their regional news tends to be better than their national news. But that's just me. People before profit. That is a brilliant mantra to have. And as well for the treaty, it absolutely should be equal part of whatever the country does. It always surprises me how angry people get about the treaty. Like we've had it for 183 years now. Like it's not new, and I get that interpretation can be iffy, and people are a bit weird about the two different translations, and there's a whole bunch of factors that make people have all sorts of feelings about it. But we should still try our best to uphold it because that's what this place was founded on. Just saw Lee Williams. I can't say I've seen his latest video, Craig. It is, I imagine it's going to be absolutely full of misogynistic bullshit, as well as a whole bunch of racism about even the remotest possibility that Nanaia Mahuta would be Prime Minister. That's my guess, because it's Lee. Good on him. Poor man needs to get out more. Well, this is interesting. See an article in the Herald about Involve Your Family from about 27 years ago. I hope it was a good story. Yeah. I'd be a bit worried if I found my family in the paper. But that's only because I know my family. If they're in the paper, it's not necessarily a good thing for some of them. Yeah. This sums it up perfectly for me, Jess. When it comes to the treaty, it is part of who we are. And there's still a lot of running to play catch up in some places to make sure that we're doing everything we can. And of course, society's evolved and people change, but it is the core of what this country is founded on. And it's so unique in that I don't think there's any other country in the world where you have a treaty between the indigenous peoples and those that wanted to come and live here. And that I think is something that should be celebrated. It's really fascinating for me. And because this week, in particular, I've actually had to deal with one of my contracts with a whole bunch of really racist, it's New Zealand, not Māori people and voices. Seeing them get so upset over something as simple as that makes me wonder how on earth do they deal with some of the stuff that is being done in the name of the treaty or how we enact elements of the treaty within society. It just blows my mind. Oh, wow. That would scare me. That would very much scare me. Oh, so many notifications coming through. Very strange. I'm ignoring other notifications and I'm concentrating on this for at least the next 5 minutes. And then I will let people go because they can watch the big hairy news at 9 o'clock, which I'm going to check out myself. So I guess, how is everyone feeling now? Have your emotions settled? Have you had a chance to take a deep breath and look at things objectively and not freak out? Still freaking out slightly? I think the thing that kind of surprises me the most, and I don't know if it annoys me or not, but it surprises me, is how much of the commentary around today's news has felt like an obituary. And I really hope that's not the case because Jacinda and I are the same age, but it's one of those things that it's kind of weird. Like it kind of feels like we should be mourning, but we're not because we don't have to because nobody's dead. It's just a reshuffle of the person who makes the decisions. So yeah, it's an interesting one for me. Yeah, I'm the same time. Like I'll watch the first 15 minutes on the PlayStation and that's about it. And then I flip over to a game or watch something on one of the other millions of streaming sites out there. Sometimes I watch Ghosts on TVNZ. That's a good show. It's a fun little mindless show. But yeah, Yeah. I don't sit down and watch scheduled TV anymore. And going to my parents, it's so hard because that's all they have. So you have to sit through ads and you have to watch things when they're broadcast. It's so old-fashioned. Yeah, I think a lot of people are in the same boat there, Judy. Mine was Christmas because that was the last time I was down visiting my family. And even then, Christmas kind of doesn't count because there's very few ads on Christmas because they're not supposed to advertise that day. They advertise themselves, but apparently that doesn't count. See, this is an interesting one for me, Justin, because there's never a late time to get involved in politics, and it's constantly changing and constantly dynamic. It's really fascinating, specifically around how Jacinda got into power and that sort of popularity increase as well. Really brought people into politics, and then with the last election being through COVID, it was a fascinating thing to sort of for me anyway to sort of sit back and watch. And now, yeah, it's a bit of a mystery as to what happens next. And I love that. I really do love that. But I'm also a little apprehensive because I don't know what's happening next. I don't like not knowing these things. I'm terrible at not knowing the future. Gutted to be honest in the comment. Yeah, I see exactly where you're coming from there, Craig. I was very lucky that I had a lot to do today anyway. Like getting new glasses, had to go to the optometrist and things like that. So I haven't had a chance to sit down and trawl through a whole bunch of the stuff that I would normally trawl through. But yeah, it's the hate and threats are unbelievable. Nobody should have had to go through that in any shape, way, or form. And I sort of hope in a couple of years, when whatever happens this year settles down, those people are held to account in some way, or they understand what's going on, or how they added to it. Here's the thing, Judy. If you go and you tackle those people head on in a social media forum, they have this, like, it's almost like a wall in front of them, and you're not going to make a dent, but you will affect yourself mentally because it feels futile and it can be really emotive putting yourself out there like that. Honestly, if you're not feeling up to it, don't do it. Don't snap back at them. Walk away knowing that you're the bigger person, but also walk away knowing that they're the people that have got a chip on their shoulder, not you, and that there's not much that you're ever going to be able to do to help them because it's like an alcoholic or somebody who's got an addiction to pills. They're not going to be able to fix these things until they can admit to themselves that maybe their attitude is a problem. And so many people don't realize that on a social media forum. It's as realistic there as it is in real life. So don't go out of your way. Don't feel bad about not saying anything in this respect because nothing you say to them is going to make a difference. And you need to look after your own mental well-being in this case. Last thought would be more. You're absolutely right here, Jess. It will be a very interesting election. I was kind of expecting it to be the Luxon versus Ardern, but and media being on the side of Lux. Now we don't know, and yeah, it'll be very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. Yeah, I thought this was really funny. Actually, like the thing I found funny about this is kind of unrelated, but the stand-up comedian Melanie Bracewell, who's moved to Australia, she hosts a TV show over there now. She broke out her Jacinda Ardern impersonation today with the caption, "Well, I'm officially retiring from impersonating the prime ministers." And the first comment that I came across on there was, well, you could always give Elbow a go. Like, try impersonating Anthony Albanese. Might not look the same, but at least you could give it a try. Not much freaking out, just feel so sad that so many have stooped to spreading hate. Yeah. I think that's a thing that for most reasonable people scares us. Like it's not just the fact that the prime minister is stepping down, which is always a bit of a shock, no matter which prime minister it is. It's the fact that she alluded to, and everyone is well aware of the fact that vitriolic hate in online and offline is an element of this, because that's not how we see ourselves as Kiwis. I found it emotional to see Jacinda show empathy, but we haven't seen her drop her guard like she did today and show her vulnerability. Yeah, that's a big one. I don't know that it's going to listen for a while. I think if Jacinda steps back, for example, like we know she's stepping back. I doubt she's not going to be involved in some way in the election, because she still has, for a lot of people, that presence of authority. So yeah, I think she'll still be around to campaign for Labor during the election, just not as somebody that's running for it. And there will still be that kind of vitriol that comes through for it. Feel sad her era has ended and she didn't really have a chance to properly govern without some crisis. That's a good point, actually. She did seem to bounce from crisis to crisis. Volcanic eruptions and terrorist shootings and all the rest of it. No other elected leader in this country has ever had to deal with anything like that. Just pandemic so consistently. That is a really interesting outlook, and I think history will probably judge her fairly well for what she managed to achieve. This is not a bad thing to do either, Justine, and I've done that myself as well. I know of the nasty effect, which makes you not want to comment on these things, because what's the point? You just see how vitriolic everything is. And I know I get affected by that. But yeah, sometimes just writing things, it's like writing a letter to yourself. It's a good idea. Definitely don't do anything that is going to stress yourself out or make things worse for you. Look after yourself first and foremost on this one. The online trolls aren't going anywhere. And we need to make sure that you're not going anywhere either. So definitely look after yourself. Oh, see, I just get back to this one. I love this one. Have the day you deserve, because they know they deserve shit if they're going to act like shit. It's great fun. Calvin Alp and Hannah Spear. I so hope so. Now, I'm not one to talk about my birthday. Like, I take it off social media and stuff like that. It's not my thing. But my birthday is incredibly close to their court date, and I'm really hoping that the Justice Department gives me what I want for my birthday this year, which would be to see them have a very lengthy jail service time. But I somehow don't think it's going to happen. But I really hope that it does. Really hope that it does. Yeah. Right. I'm going to wrap it up there. It is 8:57. I've been doing this for just on an hour. Big Hairy News was on at 9 o'clock. That's this last comment. Right, selling blockers. And yep, I like them. Oh, so very, very quickly, one of the things I love to do is tag people in a comment pointing out how much of an asshole they are, and then blocking them so they get the notification, but they can't see it. And generally, it just frustrates the hell out of them. It's great fun. Just a little bit of a mind game to keep in mind. Right. Done and dusted, everybody. Thank you very much for joining me. I will probably do this again next week when we find out who the new Prime Minister is and see what you guys are thinking then. Until then, have a great weekend. What's tomorrow? Thursday? Friday. Definitely Friday. Let's have a look at this one. Yeah, nail on the head again, Alotta. Nail on the head. I will let you know what I think of Big Hairy News. Yeah, I'm going to go give that one a watch now. Until next time, everybody, have a great weekend. Please try and have a good weekend. Deep breath, relax. It's not the end of the world. After all, it's just time for a refresh. I will talk to you guys all next time.